Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. For this month's Birds Notes program, we're going to talk about bluebirds and getting ready for their arrival. Joining us from the Audubon Center in Huntington is bird expert and conservation biologist Mark LaBarr. Thanks for being back with us, Mark.
As always, great to be here.
So it does seem a bit early, but we've had these spring-like days, and it's time, I guess, to get ready for the bluebirds.
Yeah, normally I wait until March to do the bluebird piece, but I thought I'd start a little bit earlier. We did have that set of warm temperatures, here. And, bluebirds like this male bluebird, and this shot was taken by Eric Nye.
Mm.
They can stick around to some extent in the winter, but they're often, one of the first ones back. And so getting ready as early as you can for the bluebird season, I figured we'd start talking about it here in February.
Yeah, what a beautiful shot that is. And here's a
Yeah, and
female.
so this is a female. You can see with nesting material, a picture by Mark Boyd, and a little less decorative in its coloration than the male, but at a box, you'll often see them together, and it's great. When you do get bluebirds to come to a nest box in your yard. And of course, here's a little bit later in the summer. Once the male, this is a picture by Russell Nemi, the male and female in the box, and their horde of youngsters there just waiting to be fed. So, I have a bluebird box in my yard, and I sit on the porch and I watch them all summer, and it's great entertainment.
Yeah, I guess. So these are birds that have fledged and then come back, and they're waiting for their food on top of the box.
Yeah, so they're able to fly at this point, and but they're still, just like many human children, stick around and
Yeah.
get fed for quite a bit of time after that.
So let's talk about bluebird boxes. You have a lot of different styles. Show us.
Yeah, there's many different styles. Bluebirds are natural cavity nesters, but they do take readily to boxes, as we know. And this is kind of the standard box. It's got an 1.5-inch hole, about 5 feet 5 inches deep, and that square on the front is a predator guard, which keeps things from like raccoons and things like that from reaching in and grabbing the chicks.
Ah.
But the one box that I have in my yard is a slightly different design, and this is a slit box. So here we have the opening at the top. The bluebirds readily use this, and supposedly some of the other species like house sparrows, which are invasive, don't take to these boxes as readily. So this box can often be successful. And since that slit is right at the top, you don't really need a predator guard because it's a long way down to reach in there and get the chicks. And then one last box, this is called a slant box. And this box is designed to kind of replicate a more natural hole that a bluebird might be using on the side of a branch. But these boxes will work as well too. So lots of different styles.
So depending on what you need, you said that middle one, the slit one, is that you use to keep swallows away, or to really encourage bluebirds, or just a different style.
It tends to keep some of the other species from there, and the bluebirds readily use it. So we have a number of them here on the property that have been pretty successful over the years.
Okay. And what should we do to prepare our boxes for the spring?
So now is a good time to get out there and clean your boxes out. And most boxes have a means for you to be able to open the box. This one is that standard one, and it opens on the side. The slit box opens in the front. But you want to clean all of last year's material out, or potentially there might be some other critters making a home in that over the winter, mice and things like that. So you want to make sure that box is clean. If you don't clean out the old nests, they'll come in, they'll build on top of that, and that gets them closer and closer to that hole, and it makes it easier for the predators, plus parasites and stuff like that may still be around. So now's, the next month or so, get out there and clean your boxes out and get ready for those bluebirds that'll be coming along.
It also shows that three-dimensional, that critter guard around the hole
Yep.
a little bit better. That's pretty interesting. And of course, placement, where the boxes are placed, is also very important to make sure you're attracting the bluebirds.
Yeah, so this one is right here in my yard, which is pretty open. And I was at first a little bit hesitant because there is vegetation fairly close by, but the bluebirds do like this one. You can see my pole is about 5 foot tall, and that makes it easy for you to clean the boxes out. That's always important. If you put them too high, then you may not think about it. So height is important. And then, placement is also key. Bluebirds tend to, like open areas. You want to make sure that the box is facing an open area. Um, and you also want to make sure, if you can, that the box faces east. That's another one. So oftentimes you'll see bluebird boxes out in the middle of a field, just like this. Um, this one's been used in the past, and you can see it's tough to show, but it is facing east, and there's plenty of open area around it. This is in front of our sugar house at the Audubon.
Huh. So I've seen people that have them near the edge of the forest, but you're really saying have them more out in the field.
Yeah, the closer you get them to vegetation, the closer you're going to have other birds like chickadees or house wrens take advantage of them. And so getting them way out there makes it so that you tend to get bluebirds and tree swallows.
Well, yeah. So talk about others who might use the boxes, which isn't a horrible thing, but
No. In fact, if you put the box out in the field like that, especially if it's near some water, you're likely to get tree swallows. And these aerial insectivores, the tree swallows, are declining in their own right. So folks should, kind of embrace having a pair of those. But if you want to try to make it so that you get your pair and a pair of bluebirds, you can space boxes about 15 to 20 feet apart. And that way the bluebirds will use one and the tree swallows will use the other. The bluebirds will keep other bluebirds out of that second box, and the tree swallows keep the tree swallows out of the bluebird box.
Okay,
so that's one way to incorporate both.
Happy neighbors.
Yes, yeah, sure. I like watching tree swallows just as much as I like watching bluebirds.
There you go. So we have a little bit of time for some viewer questions. There's an image from Deb Maxwell from Cabot. She has written that this partly white turkey has been around the Cabot area for at least a couple of years, she says. The turkey is with about 22 others that frequent our feeders. So can you tell us about that white turkey?
Yeah, so this turkey is showing some leucistic qualities. In other words, that some of its feathers are white. And, this may actually be advantageous for the turkey in the wintertime because it looks like a little bit of camouflage, maybe not so much in the summer. But we see this often with all sorts of birds where they'll have, whiter feather components to their plumage. But this is the first time I've seen it in a turkey, so that's great.
Is it like an albino thing? Is it just
Yeah,
anomaly?
technically it's not albinoism, but it's just the plumage. Those particular feathers don't get any pigmentation, and so it shows up that way.
So interesting. And here's another one from Tyler Atwood. And oh my goodness, he says, the hawk is back. And he says, I can't believe how close he let me get. So here's a hawk on his bird feeder, I guess. What kind of hawk is that? And what do we have here?
So this is a little sharp-shinned hawk. And yes, sharp-shins and Cooper hawks do visit bird feeders. Oftentimes they're not on top of the bird feeder, but they're a predator of small birds. And so sometimes they'll come in really close. I always get questions this time of year. There aren't any birds around my bird feeder. And sometimes it can be this critter that is lurking back in the woods waiting for a meal. But for Tyler, this one got up close and personal. We had been going back and forth with emails because, he had mentioned it. And so just great to have a new visitor to your bird feeder, one that many of the birds probably wish wasn't there.
That's true. So I have a question, but I want to make sure that people have your information. If you
Okay.
have a bird-related question, you can pass it along to Mark at the address on your screen, or you can drop Mark an email. His address is mlabarr@audubon.org. That's mlabarr@audubon.org. You can send Mark your questions and pictures, and he'll try to find the answers for you on an upcoming edition of Bird Notes, like Tyler and Deb have done. So we thank them for contributing to this show. And you know, my question is, with all these very warm days in February, and I've heard some spring-like song in the mornings, does that interrupt what really should be happening? How difficult is this for the birds, thinking maybe spring has come?
I think that's a big question that a lot of ornithologists are asking, is how the transition nowadays is impacting birds. You know, migrants that are down on their breeding ground or wintering grounds down in Central and South America, their timing is obviously more, associated with that and the length of day. But yeah, I've been hearing chickadees singing, and there was a turkey vulture reported. So, that's a really good question, Fran. And there's some concern that some of those migrating birds that time their arrival with our insect hatches, because that's
Right.
their primary food source, if that gets, offset, then that may be a challenge for the birds as they come back and try to raise their young, since insects are a big part of many of the species' diets.
So I imagine you're trying to keep track of, who's coming up early, how do they survive if we get another cold snap, which we probably will.
Yep.
And how does that all work? That's so interesting that you brought up the insects.
Yep. So it's a big question out there as we start to witness climate change, and how the birds are going to adapt to this.
Yeah. Okay, well, Mark LaBarr, thank you so much for bringing us birds and this interesting news and information. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, Fran.
And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.